Alright, hello and welcome to the Hppo show. On today's show, I think we'll just focus on creation of the game. I have a new microphone today, so if my levels are a little weird, this is going to be awkward. But yeah, I'm pretty much just going to storyboard inside of Krita and then type down relevant notes in Word, as usual, and broadcast to absolutely no one, which is okay. I've designed this system so that if I fail, which is highly likely in garnering any sort of audience, that at the end of it, I'm still going to have a card game outline that will be playable. I have somewhat of a playgroup tested out, so we will hopefully be IRL streaming those playthrough sessions Friday nights, at least once a month, and then commentary going over that and what we decide to change the numbers and create more cards for. Yeah. So there's that. All right. I think this is a little weird because while I have my levels on the screen, I really don't want to be hitting that red at all. So, alright. Awkwardness. Awkward. No, I thought for a second I'd also try out my smooth radio voice, the deep, soothing sounds that I could barely keep up for 5 minutes. So if I talk smarmy and stupid like this for the duration of this broadcast, you'll know why. Because I certainly feel a lot more professional with this microphone shoved up into my face. But yeah, I just wanted a basic storyboard. Because in my mind I have the general layout of how this game's going to play, right? You're going to have your stack of quest cards, your discard pile, your quest cards, discard pile, the epic monster. That card's probably going to be huge. Because we're going to have each of the players right with each of the players with their play spaces. That guy's isolated. What you have: quest card, discard pile, your equipment, your face-up equipment, your feats, face-up feats, that's it, right? That's the total amount of cards. And then each person's play space will eventually have their own little collection of cards. And the whole time, I really apologize for not having a topic available for this one or being able to string together enough words that this is entertaining. But this is certainly one of the most complex areas, which is why I've been dreading doing it, and I put it off for about 2 months into this creation process, right? Because one of the ways I work in general is I just keep thoughts brewing in the back of my head until they're ready to spill forward. But with streaming, this whole creation live, I know I constantly have to keep talking, even if it's about nothing. Just keep talking, just keep talking. And so I don't have time to get up and pace, walk back and forth, and mull over these thoughts. But here's what I have so far for how I think the epic monster playout should be, right? I think the whole time they're going to know what the epic monster is and what it's going to take to defeat. Alright, so whether that's, they won't know when during class selection what the first epic monster is going to be, and they won't know what the last epic monster is going to be. But they will know what the epic monster takes to defeat. And the epic monsters are going to take more and more to defeat, right? So that's a simple numbers game. But before each epic monster, I think we want some flavor of role-playing where the party's cooperating together against a challenge that will be similar to the epic monster. So in that case, but these challenges themselves should not be like the quest cards that they've completed and reward loot. They should just be challenges that perhaps add a background bonus to this specific epic monster. Like recently I've been thinking about the 5-room dungeons that are pretty common staple in beginning Dungeons and Dragons, right? And the way you design a 5-room dungeon is you have first the players encounter a combat, then the players encounter conversation or puzzle challenge, then you have the players encounter an environmental challenge, then you have the players encounter a final combat, and then you reward the players in the last room of the dungeon. Combat, puzzle, environmental, combat, final room. Yeah, that's the 5-room dungeon method. But in the Freelander card game, we're not going to give rewards for epic monster combat other than you get to continue the game. So yeah, because the whole game is doing the quest to prepare, buying your equipment card, learning your feats to prepare. and then resting, making sure you have enough health points, as well as hopefully some of the loot you got is discardable and usable in the final product. So I think we can simulate a 3-room dungeon, because already we have, with our quest cards, right, we have both loot that is a reward, and those are going to be our health pots, our 1-turn discardables, or things of that nature. And then you have, you'll need to have a player with the box and the rules, right? The de facto DM. And they will have the rewards for the special monsters. Right, because defeating Frankenstein gives a unique reward, defeating X gives a unique reward. So we will need a player in charge of that, as well as facilitating the general rules, right? Like the interaction between this and that, and this and that. And overall, the purpose of this game is to have fun, and it should have a 70% win rate. I'm hoping for at least 75 to 80% win rate, for skill being the difference between 70 and 80%. But all of that comes down to numbers and playtesting. So I think the best way to do the 3-room dungeon before the epic monster is inside there we have our challenge cards, and the players don't know what these are beforehand. So I'm going to pull this up. Okay, so yeah, this is odd. Wish I had a way to mount this that wasn't directly on my keyboard. Oh well, we're just gonna have to deal with it. So the current plan is the players complete 3 challenge rooms, aka the dungeon, then face off against the epic monster. Now, one way I think about doing this is you could select man, that is just so annoying. That's right, that's it's all broken. Why is everything I have garbage? No, hold on. Okay, so one thing that could happen is you could have the player select 2 players. So one thing you could do is you could have all the players select 2 players to enter each room first and perform a stat check against the 2 selected players as you reveal the card. So, for example, the players select the cleric and the paladin and reveal a room card. It's a trap room. So, the room cards will need different stats. Per epic monster level. So the first room, right, the stat check might be 15. The second room, the stat check might be 30. And the last room, the stat check might be 45. For example, right? Because we know the players are going to start with their stats, even if they're the high class. They're going to start with their classes about between 5 to 8, right? And then they'll have 3 rounds to gain more of that stat. So if the players enter and then they check, as well as if you have 2 players entering, this really increases the odds of success, but it also means I probably need to increase this number, so I'm going to shoot it up by, I'm going to call it 15 plus 5. So that's going to be 20, and then 40, and then 55. I'm going to level out the top because ideally, right, if you just have the rogue enter this room and the rogue has been leveling their dex stat, they should be able to pass this check with just the base stats of the other person. So, action 35. And 50. Oh, see, I just want to make these like as close to perfect as possible, so that when I get into playtesting, I'm thinking about, I think 2 Fridays from now, I'll be able to start playtesting. But yeah, then I can just slap these numbers against the certain checks and then work backwards, mechanically going like, oh, this room's a strength check, so lines of dialogue, the characters need to push open a door, or something like that. So if it's a trap room, the players do a dex check, right? So check the player's dex against the requirement. In this case, the requirement will be 20. Have a combined dex of 16, right? So they would probably be short. A rogue or bard and have a combined dex of 25. See, one interesting thing I think is so one way I think about going about this is if you have the players fail the room, right? You don't penalize them there, but I'll run through it. You could A, B, now injuries. Like I'm thinking of when it comes to Wraith combat in Dungeons and Dragons. When the Wraiths hit you, they start sapping away either your experience if you're playing the first game, or they start sapping away your stats if you're playing 3.5. So I think you can either give the epic monster another combat die, or you can give an injury to the selected player. But that requires another card and more administration. And I think we have quite a lot of administration right now, as well as singling out the players that were selected. So, like, at the end of the day, this is a game about diplomacy, because this is a fully cooperative game and not like Munchkins, where it just depends on luck of the draw and minor negotiating skills. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons depends heavily on negotiating skills because there's so many factors outside the actual roll of the die, like the favor of the GM and swaying people, which is why Dungeons and Dragons makes people quite social and adept at able to navigate. Okay. But I'm going to leave that option up there for now. Right, and then now, one thing I've been told repeatedly in my studies about game development is that if something is random and out of the player's control, it needs to be beneficial to the player, and they will consider that good. But if something is random and truly random, and it's not in the player's control, then it needs to have a far less devastating effect. Now, I think right now A is the best. But I certainly think this might make the epic monster combat itself very hard. Because remember, they're going to draw 3 rooms. And so I'm probably going to want to make at least 3 copies of each room. So yeah, it's... Well, okay, let's make 2 copies of each room. So from a production side, our rooms are going to need to be so this way the odds are against you getting 3 of the same room in the row. Right, but you're going to shuffle them between so the room cards be shuffled before epic monster combat. It could turn out that each of the 3 dungeons along the way are going to be the same. Trap card, diplomacy check. Right, and then we could actually add different flavors to all the things. So yeah, listen to some music, and then I'm gonna come back, and then I think we're going to pour time into making the 6 basic cards. Because, look, we can already do this if this is just the dex check. Right? If dex, if they pass. Right, so each of the cards could reward each of these as a fail or as a pass. And then we can do the same thing to give a flavor to strength, the same thing, a flavor to charisma, the same thing, a flavor to constitution. No. Like right now we have so much dynamism and complexity within the combat monsters, as well as the non-combat quests having a good amount of flavor, that I think it's just too much, personally. I mean, other iterations of the game, we might be able to go more complex, or updates, further patches, but I think if we wanted to go any more complex, people should just play Dungeons and Dragons. And I want to keep this always under that. Right? So, because this really doesn't flavor well with a dex check. But this does. But if we have this flavor with a constitution check, a charisma check, etc., and then you also run into the problem of RNG deciding whether or not, like, certain dungeon rooms are going to be more beneficial than other dungeon rooms for you to pass. And so that kind of lowers replayability, because now people know, like, oh, we should hit this dungeon, we should hit this dungeon, we should hit this dungeon. Right? Where if all the dungeons give the same rewards and failures, then you'll be in a much better position you'll be in a much better position to just replay quickly through the game. Because the epic monster combat's really what you want to get to here, right? But if we do it this way, right, you don't know how strong the epic monster's going to get until you start busting through the dungeons. And you're going to take no real penalty to how you prepared, right? Because at the end of this, right, so So, in regular monster combat, we will have the players throw their die against the normal monster die, and we have the normal monster die weighted in favor of the players. But they will have to win consecutive rolls to not take damage. And epic monster combat may be along the same lines. So, by default, I think we're going to have epic monster combat play out like this. Hold on. So we'll have each player perform 2 actions before the combat die are rolled. Remember, health pots and other cards you discard, which will be in our loot pile, will not require actions. But with the increasing difficulty, you will want to save as many as you can for further rounds. Like for instance here in the first room, if they sent the paladin and the cleric, but the paladin has coffee so that he can increase his dex temporarily and pass a dex check, right? That would be quite good. Starting from the player with the highest dex to the lowest, the players choose their action. The player with the highest wisdom divides the damage among the party. I'm still trying to brew how the die combat is going to work between the epic monster and the players. But I think the fallout should shake like this, right? We have dexterity checks go first. The player with the highest wisdom divides the damage among the party. The player Oh, yeah, that gives me an idea going back to this. The player with the highest intelligence selects the cleric and the paladin. Alright, so the player with the highest intelligence selects who goes in the rooms. Right, because while this is a diplomatic game and we could very well end up always with a scenario of one player dominating the actions of all the players, like, alright Steve, you draw this equipment card. Alright Bill, your cleric needs this feat card. Alright Roy, you're pretty powerful. Can you just shuffle the equipment and lose 2 actions? Or can you just lose 1 action, shuffle the equipment pile so that we can get to what we need in our stat boosts? While that is possible, right, at least this gives players agency so that the person with the intelligence selects who enters the rooms. The player with the highest wisdom divides damage among the party. The player with the highest constitution does something else. That'll be good. The player with the highest constitution gets a shield card. So that should prevent a party wipe. And then so the more constitution the highest constitution character has, the more shields they'll have. So if they have 20 constitution going into the first epic monster combat, they will have 2 shield cards to use. And then of course So I think I've been operating in my mind that Epic Monster Combat is going to operate very similar to Quest Combat, in that if I could spell each, this would be fantastic. Each player rolls their combat die against the epic monster and adds the strength from the player with the highest strength. I want to make sure, hold on, this doesn't okay, yeah, this doesn't change any of our spells. Okay, so there we pretty much used everything except charisma, and yeah, we've used pretty much everything except charisma and, well, let's see, intelligence at the start of the dungeon, dexterity during the combat, wisdom after the combat plays out, constitution. So the only thing we haven't used is charisma. And then how will we use charisma? So the epic monster dies are going to be a d20 plus because each player's combat die is going to be a d10. Make that clear. Each player's combat die is going to be a d10, and they will have the strength of the player with the highest strength. So in the first round, that may only be 8 or 9 or 11 or 12. So they'll be rolling 22. The epic monster dies are going to be a d20 or d20s. So the first round could be 6 die total, right? And then the second round and third round and yeah, I think by that point hold on. So the epic monster dies are going to be d20s plus the room dies. Right. So your first round you could only be facing an epic monster with 3 die, which means that the players are going to be at a heavy advantage because lowest rolls will be discarded. The player with the highest charisma pairs the die rolls from the epic monster. And the players. So, I think that's quite clear, right? This way everybody has something to do with each of the 6 traits. Some people will have more to do than others, since there will be 4 players, but there are 6 traits to each of the character classes. So the player with the highest charisma pairs the die rolls from the epic monster and the players. unlike Unlike Quest Combat, the wins are cumulative and not concurrent. Accumulate enough wins. Enough winning rolls to defeat the epic monster. Unlike Quest Combat, the wins are cumulative and not concurrent, so the players only need to accumulate enough winning rolls to defeat the epic monster. So since I talked about wraiths earlier, let's do a dragon like that. Now, for this version of the game, I only plan on doing 9 epic monsters, right? And then these are going to be dragon tier, god tier, eldritch monster, if I use that terminology, mind flayers, etc. So, for this first one, Dragon Elder Breath, Wraith Breath, right? Right. His hit points are what for around 1, 5, 10. 15. There, this way they'll at least have a chance to one-shot the dragon. Unless it's combat round 2. Right. This is going to be a minimum of 3 rolls, and then this is going to be a minimum of 16, and then that's going to be a minimum of 4 rolls, but I could make it much higher. So plus the monster's room die. And then they're all going to have strength that they add to the roll. Right, so even if they roll a 1, even if the epic monster rolls a 1 on their d20, right, they're going to add their strength, and their strength will increase per round. So, but the strength will not increase a whole lot. So, the minimum they could roll, right, is 9, 11, 13, right? The maximum they could roll, right, is 28. $33, 36. Right, so if the epic monster rolls 6 d20s, they're going to win a few rolls, right? Now, with the strength modifier added from only the character with the highest strength, it's very possible that they can get this number over that, hopefully. I think that math checks out. Trying to think about how to word this. So we're going to give him Wraith Breath. The character with the highest charisma, choose who gets the status effects. One thing that I think is funny is with the charisma player, they could tank the whole party and line up the die so that the epic monster like absolutely wrecks everybody. Oh, I know you rolled a 28, but I'm gonna pair it with this monster's 20. Or, oh, I know you rolled a 25, but I'm gonna pair it with this monster's roll of 30. Right, I certainly think this stacks things in favor, because the excess die are going to be the lowest die most of the time, unless you have a player deciding to sink everything. And then for each roll, the epic monster wins. The player rolls a d6 and subtracts that number from their stats as they choose. That's kind of penalizing, but they get to actually have a lot of agency over what happens. So it's not terrible. It's super not terrible. I think what's probably terrible is this damage number up here. Right, because again, the dragon already has these advantages. And while these numbers plateau, right, it is still largely up to chance, and it is up to the players to get that one character with all the strength to have more strength. Okay. Wow. Anyone have any questions? No, of course not. There's no one here. Okay. Actually, I'm going to call it a day for this broadcast because I think this is it for all we need. This is Epic Monster Combat in a nutshell. We have a 3-room dungeon check, right? We have rewards to give out. We have penalties if people fail that affect the Epic Monster Combat, but at the same time, kind of don't. No, I gotta take this away. The player with the highest charisma cannot have that control. Unless anybody's here to stop me. The player with the highest charisma assign status effects. Adds the strength from the player with the highest strength. Epic monster dies. Right, so each player will have 2 actions before. They cannot rest. So yeah, the combat rewards, the special loot from quest rewards are going to take actions. The equipment cards are going to take actions. Only the loot cards that you discard or the spells for the feat cards are not going to take any actions. Meaning if you're a mage, you can cast as many spell feats as you want. Right, for 1 action, you may tap this for +3 charisma. Right, yeah. So this costs 1 action, but And then match combat die. I just feel like Risk right now, where it's, oh no, you rolled a 6 defense, but that takes away my 5 attack, and my next lowest roll was a 5, and you rolled a 5 defense. Whereas if I got to assign die, I would assign the 1 attack to the 6 defense, because 6 always wins. So yeah. But at the same time, you have this Constitution guy out here with a lot of saves, right? At least he'll have 1 save, so if everything goes tits up in 1 round, he'll be able to pull everybody's butts out of the fire. So I'm going to keep it in the back of my mind that the Constitution may be able to stack the deck, that the Charisma will be able to stack the deck in his favor. And then, of course, if they pass all the rooms, they're going to have a pretty easy time, right? It's trap room, check the player's decks, right? Then the rooms get progressively harder. I do kind of want, like, I don't want this exponential curve of spiking difficulty. Right, that's why I think plateauing, that is fine, right? And then, yeah, the next thing I need to do is just create some more epic monsters with flavor. Because we have... Yeah. And again, remember, this all has to stay under a 60-minute time limit, so we can't just do so much. I mean, seasoned players should be able to roll through this in 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40 minutes. But I want beginners to be able to have a fun experience in 60 minutes and be able to make it to round 3. So I think that works, right? I don't know. So once again, here on the Hppo show, all we did today was work on epic monster combat in a slow, deliberate pace. If you're watching this on Twitch, I stream live every Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you're all keeping yourself safe from the coronavirus. If you'd like to support this, please like, share, and comment on the YouTube video. I'll have links to that in my Twitch, as well as links to all my socials are readily available. If you want to support me in this project until we get the Kickstarter up, I have a book available. It's quite good. It's called The Duke and the Dragon. It is a Western fantasy, a shoot 'em up style with magic and mystery. It's a very short read. It's designed to bridge the gap between short stories and novels, so it'll only take an hour and a half to read. If your reading speed's high enough, 3 hours if it's not. It's 5 acts long. It's only 99 cents as well. It's available on Amazon. There are links available everywhere. But yeah, if you've watched through this as well as the other content I have, next week I'm going to be back with more of a lesson, because as you see, I'm ending this stream 30 minutes early, and yeah, that's all the production space I have in my brain. Alright, I hope this mic wasn't super offensive, and I hope I was able to keep you entertained and not falling asleep. I know my voice isn't super exciting, and this is a new microphone, so I'm just rather rattling on, checking my levels, wasting your time, which I apologize. Once again, this has been Hppo, and this was the Hppo show, where we're designing Freelander Adventures, a 4-player card game. Yeah, wishing you all well. With love, bye.